Today, I wanted us to talk about dealing with bad news, and that's going to be talking about dealing with bad news in your personal life, in work, and through your passions. And I wanted us to discuss how we both deal with it and things that we actually find useful when getting bad news. So, the first thing I'd like to talk about is actually bad news in work. So, for instance, to kick things off, I used to get a lot of bad news when I was a self-employed videographer, and that bad news came in the terms of feedback. So, for instance, I might get a message that says, "Can you change this? Can you change that? We would like you to continuously do lots of different changes," and it wasn't aligned with like how I wanted the video to be made. And the way that I had to put those feelings behind me and move on was by just thinking that the video isn't for me, it's for them. I'm not making the video for my own satisfaction in a way that I am, but the video is for the client, and I had to put my feelings aside and just make sure that I was working on the video and it was all aligned for the client. And that's just one way that I have got bad news in my work. There are other ways, but how have you received bad news when you've been at work related to working?
What? Yeah, I have, but it's. I wouldn't say it's bad news. I think because I work in operations, it's more. I do a lot of stuff with like event planning. Not me personally, but I like to have my input. And I mean, I've been doing this job for like 5-6 years, so I'd like to say I know what I'm talking about in terms of the venue and what we can and can't do, and like our limitations and stuff. And a lot of times if we're discussing things in like, we have weekly meetings where we discuss what's going on in the diary and operationally how it's going to work. And if I'll bring something up, and I've got two things to say about it. Firstly, sometimes I'll bring something up and I feel like it's disregarded, and then the event comes and the thing that I mentioned happens and no one acted on anything I said. And then if I'm running the event, it falls on me to like, oh well, why didn't you sort this out? And I'm thinking like, I actually
you tried to sort.
I tried to. It wasn't my event. There's only so far I can do. It's not my event. Like, I might be in on the day it's happening and I might be running it for that person, but it isn't my event. I can say that I think this might be something you need to consider, or have you thought about this, or have you got a contingency plan? But a lot of the times people go, oh, you don't need one. And then when something happens and the fallout happens, then I'm the one to pick it up. So it's not bad news in the sense of that, but in terms of getting the negative feedback from people when it isn't my event, when I wanted, like, I would have had, if it was me, I would have had a plan and I would have been able to be like, okay, this has happened, but we can do this. And the client would have been none the wiser. So that's one thing that I get, not regularly, but sometimes if I'm doing project management and stuff. And the other thing is, I had something happen, it's probably last month now, relating to contractors, and a contractor turned up when they weren't supposed to, and I was I'd been away for a week, so when I came back, I remembered the conversation happening about booking this person in to do the work, and when I came back in, they turned up, and I said to them, oh, so have you spoken to the other contractor, because they were being subcontracted? And they're like, yeah, it's all fine. I was like, okay, great. So I gave them the keys to go and do what they needed to do. And it got to around 3:00 and they said, oh, we're going now, we'll be back tomorrow. And I was like, okay, we'll all be finished tomorrow because we've got an event on Wednesday. And he went, oh no, we'll need a couple of days. And I said, no, before, like, we agreed that you only had 2 days to do this because we had an event. And he went, oh no, I haven't spoken to the other contractor. And he didn't tell me any of this until he'd already started the work. And I felt so responsible, because I was just like,
It made you feel really guilty.
Yeah, I was like, well, I've let this company in to start this work under the assumption that everything was all good, like all ends, and I should have checked because I was away. I had like a week's worth of emails or whatever, and I had my own stuff that was like backed up, and it wasn't on my radar. And I felt so bad, and I was messaging all of my colleagues like, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have let them in, I shouldn't have done this. And I went to like my boss and I was like, I shouldn't have let them in, I should have checked with you. And to be honest, no one blamed me, because they were like, well, firstly, it was their mistake, and secondly, you've been off for a week and it wasn't you who booked it in, so it wasn't really for you to chase. But I felt really bad in that sense, and I thought I was going to get like quite a lot of negative pushback from like my boss, because it cost quite a lot of money to do the work as well. and it ended up being fine, but I felt so responsible. So it's not in the sense of bad news, but in terms of me feeling like I'm not doing my job properly.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the times I've made a mistake at work as well, you put a lot of the onus on yourself, and you feel like you have to deal with the problem yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like, like you said, the responsibility weighs down heavy on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like it's all up to you because you made the mistake, when usually in these work environments, it's a team effort, isn't it? Yeah. And if one of you makes a mistake, it's not the end of the world. But it does feel like it at the time.
It does, yeah. Particularly if it's something that affects either the running of something or a person or, in my case, an event or something. I feel like if it was something that could have been resolvable, if I had just gone that extra step, done that extra step, then I feel really guilty. But to be honest, like where I work, everyone works really well together, and no one really does the blame game. And it's just like, okay, this happened, it's fine, we'll just sort it, and that's the best way to be, because no one's blaming each other. But me being me and being an empathic person, I'll always take the blame, even if it's not me. I'm like, I'm sorry that this happened. And I've been told by like my boss, I'm just like, why are you apologising? It's not like your mess up. But I just feel like if I'm there on the day and I'm leading the building or I'm managing the building, then it falls on me.
Yeah, then you feel responsible, especially if you're managing the building.
And as a manager, like a lot of the time, I mean, I was told this by my dad when I first got into management. They were just like, like, you're a manager of a team, everything is your fault, even if it's not.
Yeah.
Everything will be your fault because of where you are on the hierarchy. It will fall to you, and everybody will look to you, and everybody will blame you, and that's true.
I was going to say as well, because that's how the public see it as well. They will want to, that's the phrase, let me speak to the manager. They want to, the person to blame is you, whether, you're actually responsible or not. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that before. When I was working in the care home, there might have been some sort of issue that I had literally nothing to do with. Like, it might be an issue with the car park or, something minor, not even related to the residents, and they're coming and telling me. Mm-hmm. And I just had to, I just learnt to adopt the phrase, I'll pass that message on for you. Mm-hmm. And that was the same again when I was doing some shifts at the local gym. They would come in and tell me certain things, and I'm powerless to do any of these things. Again, about the car park, or someone's parked in a bad place, and it's less like, I'm here to, you want to buy things from me or get a membership. I don't have any power over the car park. Yeah, I'm there to open and close the building. Yeah. But again, I just adopted the phrase, I'll pass the message on. Mm-hmm. And then I would write it down. I would even show them that I've written it down. I'd say, look, I will pass this message on, and it's written down for whenever the manager comes in, they will see the message. And that seemed to really help me in those situations. Mm-hmm. It was almost like a get out of jail free card for me. I would say, I'm going to pass the message on. I'm your messenger now.
Yeah, I don't really have that luxury because I'm
because you are the manager.
9 times out of 10, I'm other than if my boss is on site, but to be honest, 9 times out of 10, she's mega busy. Yeah. So I can't be I'll pass it on to the manager because I am the manager. So it's I have to deal with it. I've had a lot of times as well, this is unrelated, but I think when I first started doing my managerial job, because I was quite young, and a lot of the time it was older people making complaints. They're I want to speak to your manager, and when I'm oh yeah, that's me, they'll be and just disregard me, and then won't even end up telling me what the issue is because I was a young woman. And I was okay.
They just wouldn't believe you.
No, I was okay then, well. And
there's not much you can do about that.
No, I've definitely learned over years that to not take things so personally. When I first started being a manager, and receiving negative comments from customers or dealing with negative situations or stuff, I would get quite anxious and be oh my god, how can I deal with this? Whereas now I just go in with it and I'm right, what's up? Yeah. And they'll tell me, and if I'm there and I'm I literally can't do anything. I'm I'll say okay, I'll pass that on to the relevant department, or okay, I'll pass that on to
pass the message on.
If it's something to do with the people who book events and stuff, I'm okay, I'll pass that on to our live programmer, I'll pass that on to our venue hire manager, and leave it there. And I'll just say, a lot of the time I say, do you want to leave your number and contact details? Just because I feel that means they feel they've been heard. Yeah. And it's just that's what it comes down to. I won't contact them because it's not my place to, but I will at least allow them to pass on the information, their contact, so I can pass it on to the relevant department. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that message you said there, to make them feel like they've been heard, that's basically both of our strategies are leaning towards the same thing.
Yeah, just sort of make sure that like they're heard, but also if you can't do anything about it, don't say that. Don't just be like, I can't help you. Just be like, I'll find a way to help you. I might not be able to, but I'll find someone who can.
And like we both are saying, it might just be passing the message on to the relevant people who can deal with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think we covered a lot there about work.
Yeah, in relation to work, yeah.
So the next thing I'd like to talk about is dealing with bad news with health issues, because that's something that, to some extent, we've both dealt with. Specifically recently with other people in the family, but also stuff that I've personally dealt with, having a lifelong disease. I won't get into what it is. I've talked about it enough times on the channel. But dealing with the fallout of that has been a challenge, and actually taken... It's mostly a time game, really. It's been a case of just learning about my body, learning about how I can treat myself better, and really just seeing the time to see any negative decisions I make have the consequences shown to me, such as like drinking or smoking or ignoring my mental health. And I've seen the fallout of that. Because where it's been 11 years, or I think 11 years at this point, that I've had my inflammatory bowel disease, I've had a long time to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. And I might have had, bad news such as it's flaring up. And the main thing that I have learned is like you will have emotions, they will arise, and it's just dealing with them. And when I say dealing with them, it's just allowing yourself to feel them, really. What I've learned is the worst thing you can do is avoid those feelings. And then in terms of dealing with health of others, for instance, we won't go into details specifically of what's going on. There's people around us and pets that have dealt with health issues. Specifically, we lost one of our pets, and dealing with that, I think we dealt with that very differently.
Yeah, we did.
So shall I start, or do you want to start?
No, you can start.
So the way that I dealt with it was, well, it obviously affected you deeply when we got the news that it was our pet's time to go. You needed someone to be strong for you. So I sort of embodied that, took control, and basically made the decisions. I felt like I needed to be that strong person for you to be able to cope with it. And the way that I dealt with it was I just, in my own time, I would put on a song that allows me to feel sad from a video game and then listen to that. I went through my emotions and I sort of faced them, and I just let myself actually feel them. And I went through that on a daily basis. I just let myself feel them. And eventually it actually stopped feeling so strong. Whereas I can put that song on now. It might make me feel a bit somber, but I don't feel overly sad listening to it. I actually feel okay. It reminds me of the pet at the same time as the game that I enjoy playing. So I think for me, just sitting in that feeling of sadness and letting myself go into that sort of hole for a little bit actually made me feel a lot better once I had experienced it for an extended period of time. It wasn't actually that long. About a couple of weeks, I listened to that song over and over again. I felt the emotions, I felt it. And eventually, I just stopped feeling it as strongly. So, how have you been dealing with the emotions and the bad news?
Just to add to the pet one, just because we did react differently. Like Jake said, when we found out I was in here and got the phone call, for context, my sister works at the vet that our cat was at. And she called me and she gave me the bad news. I was grateful that it was my sister, because obviously she knew how to tell me. And I couldn't, she told me on the phone and I was hysterical, wasn't I? And I literally had to put the phone down on her.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I can't. And then I couldn't even get my words out to tell you, could I? But I think it was obvious from the way I was reacting what the news was. And it was effectively just, you need to come and see her because she's very weak and stuff like that. And I couldn't drive because I was hysterical. I was inconsolable. And I've lost pets before. I've lost many pets before. We've had lots of dogs. We've had other cats. We've done fostering. But I don't know. I don't know why something about losing Tink was I don't know what it was. It just hit me really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's because she was our pet, wasn't she? Like our first pet, because she hated you when you first moved in, and then towards the end she loved you, and it was just a really lovely. Like we only got 5 years with her, because she was quite an old cat when we got her anyway. And I think I'm the type of person that wears my heart on my sleeve, and I will just, when I feel an emotion, I will just have to feel it there and then, and I can't really suppress it. I'm a bit like, you know, imagine like you've got a glass of water that you're filling up and the tap won't turn off. That's just what it's like. And then I'm just overflowing, and I have to go through that, and I have to deal with that until I feel like I can't like cry anymore, or I can't, you know, I have to just feel it. And I think when she passed away, yeah, you were very strong. Like, I couldn't be in the room with her when she was passing. And I remember going out to the car, my sister took me to her car and she was like, you need to get some air, and like, then I remember saying to my sister on the way out, I was like, I will come back in. Like, I don't want her to go with me not in there, but like, I can't be in the room, but I want to be like in the practice. But I think at that point, the vet had already started and you were in there with her, weren't you?
I was, yeah.
And then I was going to come back in, and then my sister, because like, she was so weak, she's gone, and I was like, oh my God, and I felt awful. But yeah, I was surprised at how like I could tell you were being strong for me and you found it really hard. But like you just kind of like went very quiet and shut down and stuff.
Yeah.
But I know you were doing that because I was the opposite, so you were supporting me. And then that night, I think we both had a cry, didn't we? We put music on and...
Well, that's where we differ. Like, I like to, in a lot of ways, go and isolate myself away and feel it on my own and deal with it in my own time. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like you said, you feel it there and then.
Mm-hmm. So I don't have any control. Like I feel like I'm generally day to day. I'm very good at just sort of dealing with emotions, but when it comes to loss or bad news, that's effectively is going to result in that. I don't know how else to deal with it. It's just almost like as a switch it turns on, that's like, right, you need to just get all of this out.
And I think that whole situation that we went through there taught me to, I guess, be a lot stronger in terms of those situations, and I kind of know how to navigate how I react to things a lot better.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to try to stab that guy. But yeah, I think it helped me improve going through all of that. And one of the things that I've learned over recent times is the times when you feel the most rubbish are when you learn the most about yourself. Mm-hmm. But you don't really realise it until it's over.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like you're learning anything, does it?
No, it feels horrible at the time, but when months have passed and you've been through that terrible situation, you're better for it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of going into more details about how we deal with bad news, I mean, like I said, I'm very emotional, but then I get to a point after I've sort of felt those emotions as deeply as I can or need to, then my logic brain will kick in then, and I'll be like, right, you know, if it comes to something like an illness, I do research stuff, and sometimes that helps me, but if it's
most of the time it doesn't.
Most of the time it doesn't, particularly if it's something that's quite, you know, like the outcome is quite bleak or something like that. I feel like actually it makes me worse, and like it's a bit like when people self-diagnose, don't they? And you panic and think you're having, you know, you're going to die tomorrow or something. But yeah, so I feel the emotion very rawly right at the beginning. I let it happen. I think the biggest thing I've learnt from you, actually, from when you went to therapy, is just to feel it and don't suppress it. And like if you like, almost just like accept how you're feeling and do what you need to do to feel that, and then move on. So I think in January that's what I did, and I think I cried every day for like 2 weeks, like not a little bit, like a lot. And I couldn't go to work. I was signed off work for a little bit from like emotional stress. And then I don't know, something changed toward the end of January where I was just very, very, I think you helped with that as well. Like you're very good at bringing me back down to earth of like, right, what do we know? You're very factual, and I find that helps me quite a lot. Once I've dealt with emotion, looking at the facts is helpful to me because it kind of grounds me a little bit. I still have bad days where I feel, you know, like sad and stuff, particularly if the people around me or the person that's sick is having a bad day or whatever, you know, it kind of like makes you realise that, you know, this hasn't gone away, it's still there, it's just, you know, you're dealing with it day to day. Yeah, so I think it's just about dealing with it the best way you can, and because you deal with things very differently, but I think we help each other out how we need it. Like, you know, I need comfort when I need it, but also I know that you need space.
Yeah.
And if you are like, going back to Tink, sorry, when you were emotional, because you're not normally, when you were emotional, I would give I would give you that comfort. That would make me emotional.
Yeah.
But it was kind of good because we would like cry together, you know, and then like, which is not something we really do that often. And then we'd have a little bit of like a hug and stuff, and then usually like you have a little bit of a laugh. Like,
I don't know what, crying makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Because I think it's because I'm trying not to.
Yeah.
And I just get like a laugh whenever I'm feeling something.
Apparently it is a scientific thing that some people do laugh.
I just do. Like, if I'm any sort of emotion kind of makes me laugh.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what we've learnt from stress and dealing with bad news, and also money has been a big form of stress, but it's something that we've learnt to deal with recently, and we've come up with a plan. So if you'd like to learn about that, then click this video that's popped up right now, and you can learn about how we deal with money. Thanks for listening.